Welcome back to the Alice Knows podcast, everyone. I'm so excited about today's episode.
Me too.
We've got a real deep dive lined up for you today
Oh, yeah.
into the life of pre-presidential Donald Trump. We're going to go way beyond just like the headlines and the big like grabby stuff to really uncover
Yeah.
the patterns and motivations that really like made him who he is.
Right.
And our guide for this journey is going to be Maggie Haberman's biography, Confidence Man.
Great book.
It's
Yeah.
really like a backstage pass
Yeah.
to understanding how this real estate tycoon
Right.
turned reality TV star ultimately ended up,
Mm-hmm.
the White House.
Yeah, and what's so captivating about Haberman's book is she doesn't just like rehash those same old stories. It's
Right.
not just the same stuff. She like
Right.
really digs deep. She
Yeah.
draws on hundreds of interviews,
Yeah.
including conversations with Trump himself.
Right.
Like a lot of them. So
Oh,
she
right,
really goes all the way back to his childhood in this
Okay.
attempt to paint this like complete picture.
And that's what makes it such an interesting
Yeah.
deep dive, because we're not just looking at events, right?
Right.
Like we're trying to decipher
Mm-hmm.
the man himself.
Yeah.
So, for instance, there's this anecdote about a Staten Island bridge
Okay.
ribbon-cutting ceremony that young Donald
Okay.
was apparently obsessed with.
Interesting.
But it wasn't the bridge itself that, like, got him.
Okay.
It was how the engineer who designed the bridge was, like, practically ignored.
Oh. It's almost a metaphor, isn't it?
Yes.
This incredible feat of engineering is standing tall,
Mm-hmm.
but the politicians are the ones holding the scissors getting the credit.
Right.
You can kind of see how that would resonate with a
Right.
young, ambitious Donald Trump, right?
Yes.
Sets the stage for this
Totally.
lifelong pursuit of recognition,
Yes.
aversion to being overlooked.
Absolutely. And, that makes me think about Trump's father, Fred, right?
Yeah.
He was successful in real estate, too. But he focused on middle-class housing,
Mm-hmm.
which is a far cry from the glitz and glamour that we see Donald going after.
Right.
So it's like right from the start,
Yeah.
there was this drive to not just follow in his father's footsteps,
Mm-hmm.
but to surpass him in a very public way.
Totally. And that desire to like project a grander image than maybe what was the reality, right? To control the narrative, that appears very early on.
Yeah.
Think about like the deliberate rebranding
Yeah.
of the family business as the Trump organization.
Right.
It wasn't just a name change.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was a statement.
Yeah.
It created this perception of grandeur
Totally.
that, maybe exceeded the reality at that time.
It's like setting the stage for a career built on image and perception.
Totally.
Speaking of image, those early days in cutthroat 1970s Manhattan
Oh, yeah.
really put Trump's tactics on full display,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to the Penn Central properties.
Oh, yeah. He was determined. He was young,
Yeah.
but he wanted to acquire those properties.
Wow.
And he wasn't afraid to pull out all the stops.
Like what?
Well, he cultivated those political connections,
Okay.
especially with Mayor Beam.
Okay.
And let's just say that his interpretations of like financial backing and legal claims were very flexible.
So even back then, like bending the rules to get ahead
It seems so.
was part of the playbook.
Part of the playbook, yeah.
Wow. And we can't forget his mastery of media manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so early on, he's portraying himself as this self-made success story,
Right.
but he downplays
Yeah.
the role of his father's money and connections.
Yeah.
So it's like a carefully crafted narrative,
Very
even
good.
back then.
Totally.
It's fascinating how these patterns emerge so early on.
It is. It is.
Now, there's another crucial figure who enters the picture during this period,
Okay.
and that is Roy Cohn,
Roy Cohn, yeah.
the infamous lawyer who becomes Trump's mentor.
Yeah.
This relationship, I mean, it really seems to have like deeply impacted
Yeah.
his approach to everything.
Oh, Cohn's influence on Trump is undeniable.
Yeah.
I mean, here's this notorious figure known for his aggressive tactics,
Right.
his no apologies philosophy,
Yeah.
essentially taking young Trump under his wing.
Wow.
It's like a masterclass in like attack first legal strategies.
Oh, wow.
Always going on the offensive, never showing vulnerability,
Right.
often like blurring the lines of truth even.
So Cohn provided like the blueprint
Yeah.
for that fight back, fight back, fight back mantra we hear so much later on.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about legal battles, was it?
No.
It seemed to really permeate his entire worldview.
Exactly. Think about how Trump reacts to, like, even the slightest criticism.
Oh, yeah.
That famous sensitivity to any perceived slight. Remember the whole short-fingered vulgarian label?
Oh, from Spy Magazine?
Spy Magazine, yeah. Most people would just laughed it off.
Right.
But Trump was reportedly furious.
Right. It reveals something, I think, deeper.
Yeah.
About his relationship with masculinity and power.
Yeah.
He couldn't just brush it off.
Right.
It had to be countered aggressively.
So again, this intense focus on image and perception over substance.
Yeah.
This need to control the narrative at all costs.
At all costs. And remember, this is the same guy who meticulously curated his birthday party guest list to exclude any journalists who might write something negative.
Oh my gosh.
Everything was about shaping the story that he wanted to be told.
It's interesting how that desire for control extends, even to situations where, frankly, he wasn't in complete control. Take, for example, his foray into the Atlantic City casinos.
Right.
There's this ambition to build an empire. But behind the scenes, it's mounting debt.
Yeah.
And ultimately, he needs his father to step in to bail him out.
It speaks volumes, right, about how image often trumped reality for him.
Even when facing potential financial ruin.
He prioritized appearances. Like his father bailing him out with casino chips. It's like a microcosm of his approach to business.
Truly.
But before we move on to Trump's early political aspirations, let's take a quick detour into his personal life because, as we'll see, it's all connected. So his first marriage to Ivana, this high-profile power couple situation, constantly in the tabloids.
Tabloid fodder.
She wasn't just a trophy wife. She was a successful businesswoman.
Yeah.
In her own right, some even say even more ambitious than Donald.
Wow.
Their relationship and its very public and very messy end seems to have had a profound impact on Trump. It's hard to imagine him being genuinely wounded by anything.
Yeah.
But perhaps this divorce, amidst accusations of infidelity, a very public battle, pushed him further into this world of wealth and celebrity and surrounding himself with beautiful women.
It's like he doubled down on this image. Yeah.
Of the ultimate alpha male.
Right.
Almost to overcompensate.
Wow.
And then, of course, there's that even more tabloid-worthy marriage to Marla Maples.
Right.
And eventually the enigmatic Melania.
Right. So even with these high-profile marriages, it's striking how his inner circle seems to be dominated by men. Roy Cohn, Roger Stone, his sons, Don Jr. and Eric. It almost suggests this discomfort with viewing women as true equals.
You're right. It's like women were often seen as objects of beauty and conquest, not necessarily partners in the truest sense.
Right.
And this competitive dominance-driven worldview seems to have been further reinforced by his relationship with his father.
Fred Trump.
Demanding patriarch.
Right.
Who expected nothing less than success.
This classic father-son dynamic, but like magnified on a grand scale.
Magnified,
So we've got this complex web of ambition, insecurity.
A need for dominance, a complicated relationship with women and his father. It's like all these threads are weaving together to create the second Donald Trump, who would eventually set his sights on the White House.
And what a fascinating and ultimately consequential journey that would be. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, it's fascinating to think about how all those experiences might have fueled his political ambitions. It wasn't just like a sudden decision. You know, he'd been toying with this idea of running for president for quite some time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. So it wasn't just the birther movement that sparked that?
Not at all.
Okay.
In fact, he even launched this brief campaign with the Reform Party back in 1999.
Oh, wow.
It was short-lived, but it offers this glimpse into his early political thinking and, you know, his willingness to position himself as an outsider.
That's interesting. But wouldn't that aligning with the Reform Party, which was seen as more populist, contradict his image as this wealthy businessman?
Perhaps, but it also reveals his opportunistic nature and this knack for tapping into existing discontent.
Okay.
Plus, his Reform Party platform actually foreshadowed some key elements of his later campaigns.
Like what?
Like advocating for universal health care.
Oh, wow.
And opposing trade deals he deemed unfair to America.
So even back then, he was appealing to a sense of grievance and promising to shake up the system.
Totally.
But why did he abandon the Reform Party bid?
He claims he didn't want to split the conservative vote and risk Al Gore winning the presidency.
Oh, wow.
Quite ironic considering what happened in 2016.
It really is.
Yeah.
But before that fateful 2016 election, there was another pivotal event that seemed to have deeply influenced Trump's political trajectory.
Okay.
9/11?
Yes, 9/11, a turning point for so many, including Trump. However, his reaction to this national tragedy differed significantly from most.
In what way?
I mean, there was this overwhelming sense of grief and vulnerability.
Right.
But in an interview shortly after the attacks, Trump focused on how his building 40 Wall Street was now the tallest in Lower Manhattan.
Because the Twin Towers were gone.
Yeah.
That's surprising to say the least.
It is.
It's almost as if he was viewing this national tragedy through a very personal lens, even a self-centered lens.
Yeah, it's a stark example of his tendency to prioritize his own interests and perspectives. Even in moments of collective trauma. It fits with that pattern of needing to be at the center. To be the one recognized, even if the context is completely inappropriate.
It's a jarring contrast to the prevailing sentiment of unity and mourning at the time.
It really is.
But moving on, there's another seemingly unrelated piece of the puzzle that actually played a huge role in shaping Trump's political path.
Okay.
The Apprentice.
Oh, yes. The Apprentice, not just a reality show. A carefully crafted image-building machine. Before that, Trump was mostly like a New York phenomenon. A tabloid fixture. The Apprentice took him national, introduced him to a whole new audience as this savvy, decisive businessman.
It was like a giant free infomercial for Trump, the brand.
It was.
But wasn't that image at odds with his earlier casino struggles?
Perhaps. But The Apprentice allowed him to kind of like rewrite the narrative, present himself as the ultimate deal maker, the boss who always got things done. It tapped into this desire for strong, decisive leadership and allowed him to connect with audiences on an emotional level.
It's amazing how a reality show could have such a profound impact on American politics.
It really is.
But it wasn't just about raising his profile, right? It also honed his skills as a performer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He learned to command attention, to connect with people's emotions, to create this larger-than-life persona that people found compelling, whether they loved him or hated him.
So The Apprentice was essentially a training ground for his future political endeavors.
It was.
And speaking of those political endeavors, we can't talk about Trump's rise without addressing the elephant in the room. Barack Obama's election.
Barack Obama,
Obama's presidency seems to have been a major catalyst for Trump's political ambitions. There's a sense that it triggered something in him, perhaps tapping into these deep-seated insecurities about race and status.
That's a bold statement.
It is, but it makes you think about his embrace of the birther conspiracy theory.
It
wasn't just a political tactic. It felt personal.
It did. It was a calculated move to tap into existing racial anxieties and resentment towards Obama. It allowed him to connect with a segment of the electorate that felt marginalized, forgotten, and threatened by this changing face of America.
It was just a cynical ploy, but it worked.
Yeah.
It solidified his position as a voice.
Yeah.
For those who felt unheard, and gave him a platform to amplify their grievances.
Exactly. He became the champion of the forgotten man.
Right.
The outsider who promised to shake up the establishment and make America great again.
Right.
But before we get to that fateful 2016 campaign,
yeah,
we need to talk about another crucial turning point.
Okay.
His embrace by the conservative movement.
That's an interesting point. How did he go from this brash New York businessman known for his tabloid scandals
right.
to being accepted by the Republican Party?
It was a gradual process, but a key moment was his 2011 speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC. He delivered this fiery populist message, railing against trade deals, illegal immigration, and political correctness.
So it was like a preview of his 2016 campaign platform.
Years before he officially entered the race, it was a test run, and it was a resounding success.
Wow.
The CPAC audience loved his no-holds-barred style, and his willingness to say what they were thinking but felt afraid to say out loud, it showed he had a real connection with the Republican base.
It's incredible how these seemingly disparate pieces, like his personal life, his business dealings,
his reality TV stardom,
his reactions to national events, and his calculated moves within the political sphere, all came together to pave the way for his eventual run for president.
It's like the perfect storm of ambition, opportunity, and this changing political landscape.
And that's what makes this deep dive so captivating. It's not just about understanding Donald Trump. It's about understanding a particular moment in American history and how this one man with this unique blend of strengths and flaws was able to capitalize on it.
Exactly.
It's been an incredible journey so far.
It has.
Tracing his evolution from those early days in Queens to the cusp of political power. But before we get to the main event, Trump's 2016 campaign and his time in the White House, we need to address one more crucial aspect of his pre-presidential life. His relationship with his children.
Ah, yes, the Trump children. They played a significant role in his life. Both personally and professionally. It's impossible to fully grasp the man without understanding their influence.
All right, so let's dive into the world of Don Jr., Ivanka, Eric, Tiffany, and Barron. Each of them has their own unique relationship with their father. And it's fascinating to see how those dynamics played out.
You're right. They each bring something different to the table. Don Jr., often seen as like his father's political heir apparent, has been such a vocal supporter and defender throughout his career.
He's definitely inherited his father's fighting spirit and that never back down attitude.
Indeed. And then there's Ivanka, who has always seemed to hold a special place in her father's heart. You know, she cultivated this image as the more polished, moderate counterpoint to her father's brashness.
She tried to soften his edges, at least in the public eye. But she was also like a shrewd businesswoman in her own right.
Exactly.
Deeply involved in the family business.
And then there's Eric, who often seems to fly under the radar, but has been like a loyal and steady presence in his father's life.
He's often described as the more level-headed and pragmatic of the Trump sons, content to work behind the scenes.
And then we have Tiffany, Donald's daughter, from his marriage to Marla Maples, who has always seemed to be on the periphery of the family dynamics.
She's had a more independent path, forging her own identity outside the Trump empire. And finally, there's Barron, the youngest, who's largely been shielded from the public eye.
It's understandable, given his age and the intense scrutiny that the family faces.
It's interesting to see how these different relationships, with their varying levels of closeness and influence, shapes Donald Trump's approach to family and ultimately his approach to leadership.
It's like a microcosm of his broader worldview with its emphasis on loyalty, competition, and maintaining a tight inner circle.
But it also highlights a certain vulnerability. Like a need for familial validation. That seems to run pretty deep.
You hit the nail on the head. These family dynamics add another layer of complexity to this already multifaceted portrait we're painting of Donald Trump.
It's incredible how all these seemingly unrelated pieces, his childhood experiences, his business ventures,
his personal relationship,
his media savvy, his political maneuvering, all come together to create this incredibly complex and fascinating individual. It's like a puzzle we're slowly piecing together, revealing a man who is both larger than life and deeply human.
And it really is remarkable how all those threads converge, culminating in that unexpected victory in 2016. And then once he's in the White House, you see those patterns we've been talking about. The need for loyalty, sensitivity to criticism, tendency to view everything as a transaction. It continues to shape his actions and decisions as president.
That's such a crucial point because it's easy to get swept up in the day-to-day of his presidency. But you have to remember, these weren't just impulsive actions. They were rooted in deeply ingrained patterns of behavior.
Exactly. Like, think about that obsession with loyalty. It wasn't just a preference. It was a demand. Like, anyone perceived as disloyal, even if they were just offering a dissenting opinion, cast out,
Yeah.
it mirrors that need for control.
Right.
That aversion to being challenged.
Yeah.
We saw even in his early business dealings.
Exactly. And then there's his constant need for affirmation.
Oh, yeah.
For praise.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough to just be president.
Right. He needed constant reassurance.
Yeah.
A chorus of voices telling him how great he was.
It's almost as if the presidency itself
Right.
wasn't enough to satisfy that
Right.
deep-seated need for recognition
Yeah.
that we've traced all the way back to his childhood.
Right.
He needed more constant validation.
And when that validation wasn't forthcoming,
Yeah.
or even worse, when he was faced with criticism,
Wow.
we saw those familiar patterns reemerge.
Yeah.
The lashing out,
The belittling.
the attempts to discredit anyone who dared to challenge him.
It's that Cone-esque approach.
Yeah.
Attack, attack, attack,
Right.
applied to the political arena.
Right.
It's as if he just couldn't separate his own ego
Yeah.
from the office he held.
Right.
His need to win from the national interest.
But wasn't that part of his appeal
Yeah.
to a certain segment of the population?
Totally.
This image of the strong man, the outsider who wouldn't back down from a fight,
Right.
who would drain the swamp and challenge the establishment. Absolutely. He tapped into a deep vein of anger and frustration
Right.
with the status quo,
Yeah.
a desire for a leader who would just disrupt the system and shake things up, and his willingness to flout norms, to
Right.
say what others wouldn't,
Yes.
to present himself as this fearless fighter,
Yeah.
resonated with that sentiment.
It's a reminder that understanding Donald Trump isn't just about analyzing individual actions or policies.
Right.
It's about understanding the broader context,
Yeah,
the social and political forces that created the conditions for his rise.
precisely. And that's why I think this deep dive is so valuable. It's not about just rehashing familiar stories.
Right.
It's about connecting the dots,
Yeah.
uncovering the patterns, and understanding how this one man,
Right.
with his unique blend of strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
ambition and insecurity, was able to become such a consequential figure
Yeah.
in modern American history.
It's been an incredible journey exploring the life and times of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
From his childhood in Queens to the boardrooms of Manhattan,
To the bright lights of reality TV, to the Oval Office.
we've traced the evolution of a man
Yeah.
who defied expectations, challenged conventions,
Mm-hmm.
and left an undeniable mark on the American psyche.
Totally.
And if you're finding this as insightful as we are,
Yeah.
be sure to check out Haberman's full biography
Yeah.
for even more insights.
Great read.
So that concludes our deep dive into Donald Trump's world before the presidency.
Yeah.
We've explored his childhood, his business ventures,
His forays into entertainment and politics.
and the key relationships that shaped his worldview.
Yeah.
It's a complex and often contradictory portrait, but one that offers valuable insights into the man who would become the 45th President of the United States.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode with your friends. Join the Allison Knows crew on YouTube, and let's keep exploring the world together. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for listening to the Allison Knows podcast. Follow Allison on allisonknows.bsky.social on Blue Sky. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.